Hello, and welcome to a special edition of Talk the Block.
Special.
This is Amy, and I am here with my globe-trotting husband, Stephen.
Hey, good to be back. Good to
Yeah.
to be sitting down for a little while.
And what a great weekend we had. What a great party in Utah for the open house for the four Rock the Block
party.
houses. A big block party. And it was big. I could not believe how many people were there.
Now, neither could Hamlet Homes.
Yeah.
I mean, it was unbelievable.
It was crazy. There were 5,000 people there on Friday,
Well, that was
and
just-
I'd be shocked if there weren't more people there on Saturday.
Well, the way they said the only way they could estimate was by the number of plates that the food truck sold. Because if somebody shows up and they didn't eat, they wouldn't have had a way to count them. And we only bought one plate, and we were there 2 days. So their estimates, I mean, they just have no idea because they didn't sell tickets. So it was
one of them told me there were 5,000 there on Friday.
Well, yeah,
so,
but she said the way that she figured that out was because just the number of plates sold on the food trucks. They had 2 food trucks there.
Food trucks, 4 radio stations, a big auction, lots of Hamlet Homes people, and some really beautiful designs. So first of all, thank you for Hamlet Homes for being such great hosts.
Yep.
We really enjoyed meeting everybody and getting a little bit of the inside story. Nothing that would violate their NDA agreements.
Very careful about that.
Very careful about that. But we did learn a lot of behind-the-scenes info that we are here
We weren't
to
careful
share
about
with
that.
you
They were
today.
careful about
They were
that.
careful. We are not careful at all on this
Yes,
podcast.
it's not going to bother us.
We're not affiliated with anybody. We've signed nothing. We will tell you
we don't want to get them in
everything
trouble.
we saw. but we're not here to get anybody in trouble. So we're going to talk about the 4 homes, what we observed up close and in person. And I will say, walking around with the other 5,000 people through these homes, it really felt like each home was somebody's favorite, right? There were some people that were like, oh, Chelsea and Cole's is the best.
Oh, yeah.
There were a lot of fans of Tristan and Kamahai, even fans of the Knights who thought that house was the best.
Well, yeah. Well, we ran into a New Kids on the Block fan, but she said that the house wasn't her favorite, but the band was.
They were her favorite team. Yeah.
But it was funny. We would be in a room, and we'd be sitting there panning the thing, and there'd be another family there going, this is awesome.
Yeah.
It's like, and we're looking at, and we even talked to a couple of people about, okay, what, these are things we don't like. And they're like, well, that doesn't bother us.
Yeah,
And so then they talk about what it was that they liked about it. Yeah. So it was, I mean, everybody's got, their different take. And we talked to the Hamlet Home peoples, and they're like, oh yeah, everybody's all over the map. I mean, you hear one group of people talk about how this is nice, and the next group comes in, they hate it. So.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing about design, right? There's something for everybody, everybody's personal taste. And I think these houses were different enough that it wasn't, one house that was predominantly loved by everyone. Everyone sort of had their favorite, and it was pretty evenly distributed.
As far as we could tell, yeah.
Okay, so what we're going to talk about today, we're going to try. I will try not to insert my opinions into everything. We've talked a lot.
That is what we're on the show for.
Yeah, but we're gonna try to focus less on our opinions and more on describing to you, our listener, what was different about seeing the houses in person versus seeing them on TV.
Yeah, but you can still have your opinion about whether you liked it or not. I mean, you got to have an opinion.
All right. Well, of course, I just said I'm going to try to tone down the opinion part and focus more on, hey, what is different when you experience these houses in person? In some cases, there are things that you didn't see on TV that you could see when you went through the houses. In some cases, there were things that were on the TV show but mysteriously disappeared by the time we had the open houses.
Something's missing here. Something big is missing here.
And then finally, there were things that just hit you differently, right? Looked a lot bigger, looked a lot smaller, looked more important, looked less important when you saw them in person. So we're going to try to give you insight on all of that for all 4 of the houses based on our trip to Utah. And I would say we probably spent a total of about 8 hours walking through the houses and talking to people at the Rock the Plot party. Would you say, Stephen?
Yeah, we definitely spent at least 6 hours on Friday. We got there, it started at 10, we got there at 11:30, and it was a zoo already on a Friday, 11:30 on a Friday. We were there till at least 5:30, and then we came back the next day because our flight was in the afternoon, and we spent at least an hour, there.
Yeah, at least an hour. So quite a bit of time. So hopefully this will be interesting. We'll give you some insights from our trip. And the first thing that I want to share is this site for Hamlet Homes, for this Worthington Ranch development, is even more gorgeous than it looks on TV. The mountains seem closer, and you literally have mountain ranges from 360, right? So no matter what view you're looking out your window, you're getting some sort of mountain view. Now, I will say the most dramatic mountain view by far was from the back of the rookie houses. So they did have a little bit of advantage that they had that beautiful view off the back of their houses to look at. But really, there wasn't a bad view. It was a gorgeous location, and on TV you looked at it and it's kind of like these 4 houses in the middle of nowhere. It looks a little desolate. It's really not like that. I mean, it's definitely a rural community, but you can see it being built up. There's a lot more homes going up in this community. It's not going to be crowded by any means, but it looks like it's going to be just a gorgeous development.
Yeah, so it's Grantsville was about half an hour from the airport, Salt Lake City Airport, and you go past a mountain range on the way to it. So your view of Salt Lake City is impeded because of a mountain range. I mean, so there's just mountain range after mountain range after mountain range, and Hamlet Homes had been thinking that they would be part of season 5, but they didn't want to do Colorado and then Utah, so they had a season between. They were gonna. Where did they say they were gonna be?
They were gonna do Park City.
Park City,
but the Park City development wasn't available this year, so they did this one in Grantsville, which I think was a good choice. Right? It's a little up and coming, more family community. Park City is very kind of upper elite status, and don't get me wrong, these houses are elite, but I think it's probably a little bit more of an affordable community.
Yeah, and the nice thing about where these houses are is there really isn't anything close. So the production company was able to spread out and take up as much room as they needed. They didn't have to worry about annoying somebody close by, and so that from that standpoint, this was a pretty good location for them to build these houses, which they started in May of last year, finished, but was it back in September? And then the show went on till November. And so they've been holding on to these homes for 6 months.
Yeah, through the whole airing of the show, they've been carrying these homes.
You couldn't look at them, couldn't open them, couldn't do anything with them.
Yeah, and the VP of Marketing, Tammy, who was just awesome, she was there on site almost every day, and she said it was like nothing she ever experienced. There were 200 people there every day between the Hamlet Home people, the other workmen who were there for it, the production assistants, the TV people. It was really like its own little temporary pop-up community that was there. And there were even trailers for the designers, and some of them, she said, actually lived on site in those trailers over the 7 weeks of filming. So I thought that was really interesting. I would have thought they all would have gone to hotels or something, but some of them actually stayed on site.
Yeah, they stayed on site at least during the week, especially if there was some design. I guess there were some significant periods where there was no real design work going, and so the designers didn't need to be there. So it sounded like most of the time they would not. But the designers had, looking about what happens prior to the show coming on, is that they started building the homes, and the designers could put requests in for things that they wanted as Hamlet was building the homes. And so one of the things that they called out was that in the Team Aloha's basement, when they had that bar, they had decided that they wanted a sink, but apparently they decided that after the cutoff. So if they had decided it previously to that, they would have been able to have a sink. down in that bar area. So there was a time where they could give them some things, and then Hamlet Homes would make sure that whatever they were requesting either fit the Utah codes or fit the design aesthetic that Hamlet Homes was working with. So they wanted to make sure the quality of the homes was up to their standards, that the features of the homes were up to what people expect from Hamlet Homes, and that it all worked with the Utah building codes, which apparently you can't have plumbing in an exterior wall, which I'm not sure about, because when I was going through the pictures, I did
unless
see...
they're double insulated.
Oh, was it? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Double insulate. Okay. Because I did see some exterior spigots and some hoses, and so I started wondering. But yeah, I guess there was the issue with the sink in Team Aloha's kitchen. That I guess they did that reorientation, and because of that, they had to route the plumbing somewhat interestingly, not through the wall. Opened up the cabinets to see it, but I guess whatever they had done, there was some magic that happened. But yeah, just kind of interesting about how they had to conform to building codes. They had these old ideas. How the trade outs was another interesting term that we ran across. With some of the things that they got with the exterior buildings and how they actually do the accounting for the show. And so I happened to mention to Tammy about how in the last couple of weeks it seemed like the budget kind of jumped around. She's like, yeah.
TV magic.
TV, yeah. It's like, and so what they did was that leading up to the show, they had all of their trades. So the people that are working on the homes are people that Hamlet Homes works with. So if you're a plumber Hamlet Homes always works with. And so you would give your bid and give your rates for being available 24 hours a day, being on call at a moment's notice. And so these were the rates that that all the design teams had to work with, and so they were charged accordingly against their budget, and Hamlet Homes was paid, and then they passed it on. But so it was kind of interesting how that worked.
And I got the impression for a lot of the hard goods and appliances and things like that, the designers used their connections. And that was another piece. So they were able, in some cases, to get things at a fraction of the cost that you would pay if you were redoing this house just by using some of their contacts in the industry.
Yeah, like that casita, nobody had any idea, according to what we were told. Nobody had any idea that was going to show up. So it's not like that was something that was planned with regards to the show. Now, maybe Alison had that in her back pocket. It was a vendor that she'd used on another show that she had done. I'm guessing Windy City Rehab, but who knows? She's been on a number of shows. And she just called them up, and they were able to get it there like the next day. And so, yeah, they said the designers all had their contacts. They all had things that they could call in, and then the costs of those things became trade outs. Mm-hmm. And
and then any of the actual reconstruction in the homes, like the camelas constantly moving walls here and there, all of those were actually done by Hamlet Homes. They were their homes, and anything that was construction, not design, they did it themselves because they needed to ensure the quality level that they have for Hamlet Homes.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So that's a little bit of the behind-the-scenes magic. Oh, wait. What else? Oh,
the one other call out I had. We wound up talking to JP, who is the director of construction or the VP of construction, the head engineer. And we happened to be up in one of the bonus lofts, and we were talking about how there was no elevator. And he said, yeah, we had... They were surprised, too, that they had closets that, in order to build an elevator, you've got closets that line up on top of each other and through all of the different floors. He said, yeah, this closet right here is right where they could put an elevator. And I guess the current cost is like $10K.
Yeah, so they could have done an elevator. The house was set up with a closet that went from the basement all the way to the second floor, and no one chose to do that addition.
So that would have taken away a little bit of space for the pantry, but, they were kind of reorienting things anyway, but yeah.
Yeah. I was, I guess maybe because Brian and Sarah, that didn't really seem to get them the credit that it deserved in Florida. Nobody decided to do it.
Yeah.
But I was kind of surprised.
I went back to my notes from that season. They paid $35,000. Mm-hmm. They had a $35,000 credit. So $10,000 seems a lot more reasonable.
Yeah, well, who knows the quality and type of elevators,
Yeah,
but anyway,
it's definitely a range, yeah.
Yeah, considering some of the things they've done.
But JP said they could have used this $10,000 elevator, so it must have been at least up to Hamlet Homes' standard.
Yeah. So that's kind of surprising that nobody did that. That good call out, Stephen. Okay, so I'm going to start by taking a super quick break, and then we will be right back talking about the homes. Okay, right before we went to break, it sounds like there was something on the tip of your tongue, Stephen. Did I cut you off?
Yeah, the last thing I wanted to call out was I remember when we first saw them walking into the houses in the first episode, and you got the feeling like the ceilings were massive. Well, they were 10 feet. So 10 feet tall on the main and the second floor, 9 feet in the basement. So not exceedingly huge like it felt, but definitely tall ceilings.
Yeah, and I would say, Stephen, that was a theme I would call out as one thing that surprised me, is that many of the spaces did not seem as expansive as they were on TV.
Yeah.
Like on TV, when they opened that front door and panned down the hallway, you would have thought that was like a 200-foot hallway and super wide and super big space. And it wasn't cramped, but it certainly wasn't overly spacious. Much smaller field than on TV.
Yeah, I would say that most of the time when we had the sense that something was smaller than it, or the size was different than it was on TV, it was smaller.
Yeah.
Like the backyards. I mean, it seemed like, like for Chelsea and Cole, that the swings and the trampoline were so far from the house. And really not. It was really fairly close, just about, maybe 10 feet sort of thing. So, yeah, there were a couple of things where we did walk in and we went, wow, this is bigger.
Yeah, there were a couple like that, and we'll call that out. But overall, the feeling was a little bit smaller than what you see on TV. And then one thing that I really noticed is the stairways were very narrow.
Yeah.
Maybe this was because there were 5,000 people walking up and down the stairs, but you really couldn't get two people going
it was
by
hard
each
to
other
go
in the
two
stairway.
people.
They were, not tiny stairways by any means, but, on TV, they looked very big and very grand. And in reality, they were just, average width stairways.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the layout of the houses and some of the things that were the same in all the houses, but you didn't get to see on TV. The first thing that really surprised me is there was a whole second main suite on the first floor.
Yeah.
And especially in the rookie houses, the back of that main suite was pretty much a wall of windows with just a gorgeous view of the mountains. So it was a beautiful space, and it had a pretty good sized closet, probably bigger than the closets in Cole and Chelsea's upstairs main suite.
Definitely.
And a good sized bathroom with the double sink, separate shower, bathtub, and all of this non-seen on TV area was finished in neutral colors. It looked very nice. You could move in and use it right away. Of course, you could, design it and put in a splash of color if you wanted, but the bedrooms were carpeted, the bathrooms were tiled and ready to go. And that main suite in particular, I'm really kind of sad that they didn't get to design that, because I think that would love to see what the designers would have done with that.
Yeah, all of the non-designed spaces, which had signs on all of them, were done really nice and tastefully done. And each house had its own kind of personality. I think one of those showers we actually saw had a pebbled floor, raised pebble floor, but not all of them. So the houses were not done cookie cutter. They
had little differences, always neutral, but differences in the tile and the carpet they used in each one.
Yeah.
Now, in addition to the main suite on the first floor, there were 2 bedrooms that we never saw on the second floor, and also 2 bedrooms in the basement. And you might think, well, how could you have bedrooms in the basement? There were actually little stone carve-outs next to the windows, and then there was a little ladder that went from the bottom of the stove up to the top. So it could count as a bedroom because you could open that window and climb up that little ladder to get outside if you needed to.
A window well. I looked up
window
the
well. That's what it's
term
called.
that,
okay.
So in a window well, you had to have a little ladder. It was, I guess you'd have to. Some of those were a little deep. The other thing that was kind of interesting, what was it, on the side of the house opposite the garage, there was a set of stairs that went down to the basement.
Yeah.
So the main living area, they had a set of stairs that you could exit from, or come into or exit from. And that was considered the ADU.
Yeah.
And which is why, even though Alison,
you're moving ahead of yourself.
Okay.
Here. Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So that was the ADU.
Yeah, and so Tammy actually said that each of the homes had been zoned for an ADU.
Yeah.
So if you bought that house and you wanted to have a lockout basement and rent that out, it would have been a living room, kitchen, 2 bedrooms, and I don't remember if there was 1 bathroom or 2 bathrooms down there. But it was set up so that you could easily rent that out as a separate unit if you wanted to.
Yeah, I think 1.
Okay.
I think it looks like 1.
All right. So that's a little bit. Anything else about the overall things that were the same about all houses that we didn't see on TV?
In the show, they highlighted working on the exteriors, and they pretty much showed the front and the back. The sides were painted. I think sometimes when we saw the cut of the sides of the house on the show, they looked unfinished. They were finished. The thing that was stark was that the yards between the houses looked like a barren desert. There was nothing there.
They finished the front yard and the backyard of each house, but then there was a strip, I don't know, maybe 30, 40 feet wide between the houses. And it wasn't finished at all. It was just stone and dirt in between the houses. So it wasn't clear to me who owned that strip between the houses or what was going to happen to it.
Fair.
But anyway, that was something that we noticed that wasn't really emphasized on the TV show, let's say.
I mean, because it just happens to be next to Cole and Chelsea's house, but since they're in the corner of, I guess an intersection, because those 2 streets actually have different names. And I don't believe Cole and Chelsea were doing landscaping all the way to the road, but that part was done. So, so that part between what was done for Cole and Chelsea's house and then whatever that street was, that was finished. So when you would drive into there, you would see something finished next to that one house. So
yeah. Okay, well, speaking of Cole and Chelsea, Stephen, I'm going to go through the houses in the order that we visited them on the first day, if that's okay with you. And we'll start off with Cole and Chelsea right after this break. Okay, Cole and Chelsea's house. So the first thing that we noticed was there was no cement pad for a camper.
And there's not going to be.
Cole kept going on and on about how he was going to have this pad. It never materialized. They put the tiny house there for the judging, and if you were watching closely on TV, you might have noticed there was not concrete under it.
Well, sometimes there was.
Well, I think it depends where they put it, but there's no concrete there. There is no pad for a camper.
Tammy said that was a little TV magic, but there was nothing there, and there's no plans to put it there.
Okay. All right. The second thing that I noticed going up to their house, and I thought this was the case on TV, but I actually verified it in person. So you might remember how they had a porch swing on the front of their house, and they made it into a porch bed because Cole and Chelsea like to make things into beds. Well, the porch bed was too big for the porch. So if you wanted to try to get into the porch bed, you almost fell off of the porch because you had about 8 to 12 inches between the edge of the bed and the edge of the porch to walk over there and try to climb on it. And then when you tried to climb on it, because it was so deep, you had to scoot and work your way back on it. So I don't know why they just didn't go for a porch swing. That was not practical and not. I love the idea of a porch swing, but the porch bed on their front porch, not a good call, Cole and Chelsea.
Yeah, I didn't try to get into it.
But you saw me getting
but
in.
Yeah, I took a picture of her trying to walk to it, and it was very narrow. I mean, of course, you could walk in front of the house and then step up on top of the porch and then step into the daybed. But it did not look that easy. And then I started wondering if they showed Chelsea getting out of that thing. And Amy said no.
No, they never showed it. She was sitting there, but they never showed her getting out. Because there's no graceful way to get out of that, I don't think,
Well, Cole could have picked her up and set her down. That's probably how she got in and out of it.
That probably is.
Yeah.
Okay, so while I didn't love the porch swing, if you remember in their front office, they did like a daybed treatment with shelves all around one wall. And that actually worked. I didn't mind the daybed in there. That room looked good with the green and the all of the bookshelves surrounding the window. It was very noticeable that pocket door they had between the powder room and the office was a lot shorter than the other doors. It was shorter by at least a foot, probably more like 18 inches. So it looked a little bit odd, just like it did on TV. But hey, if you really want an ensuite, you've got one.
Yeah, that's another room. And consistently, I think, in all 4 homes, was a lot smaller than it seemed on TV. And, since the daybed was built in, if you wanted to put a desk in there, you would have been in trouble. It'd have been a narrow desk. Yeah, it was definitely a lot smaller. And I kept thinking I should go back and watch that and see how these people moved around in it. But yeah, it was definitely small.
Yeah, and the entryway itself seemed smaller. I mean, the little marble floor they went there only extended probably 8 feet from the doorway. So you did have the marble at the entry, but it didn't look as big as it did on TV.
Yeah.
But one thing that surprisingly I really liked better in their house than I did on TV was the elk laundry room.
Yeah, because it was, again, smaller than it seemed on TV, and so it was not overwhelming to be in there and to see this elk wallpaper. The colors were all very complimentary. It was actually very, very nice-looking mudroom, and I actually have it written down that it was my favorite one.
Ooh, yeah. I thought I didn't care for it that much on TV, but it looked good in person, and the arch door to the kitchen looked good.
Yeah.
Okay. So moving into their kitchen, on TV, I thought their kitchen would be very, very dark because of the dark cabinets and appliances. And it really didn't seem overly dark in there.
To her.
Yeah. Okay. You thought it seemed
for me, it still felt dark. It still felt dark. Dark to dark, dark, dark.
Dark. However, I think, Stephen, we both agree that the wine rack, quote unquote, that they made out of the ski chalet and shoved into the pantry was
just as bad as it seemed on TV. It actually maybe worse because they had a couple of bottles in there, and I'm like, these bottles are, not sitting in there very nice. I think there was like 2 bottles in there and they were on top of each other. So it wasn't even really wide enough for 2 bottles to sit in there.
It wasn't very attractive and it wasn't very practical. I think the idea maybe of putting some wine storage there would be good, but it didn't.
Oh, yeah, you definitely could because there was a wall back behind it. So they were actually filling in some space, which was good. And their pantry room looked really nice. And I liked the double doors that they had in front of it. I guess most of the teams had that. So that was pretty consistent. And the thing that was surprising for me was that when you were in front of the range, that the hood did not. It wasn't sparkly. It was just a nice color.
Yeah, when you moved away from it, it got sparkly. But when you were next to it, it looked fine.
Yeah, it looked fine. Yeah, okay. It was just But then you try to step away and take a picture of it, and it's sparkly all over again. So.
Okay, so Stephen, what did you think? Well, let me just pause for a minute here. Remember how we said most things looked a little bit smaller in person than they did on TV? Their kitchen island did not look smaller than it did on TV. That was a really big kitchen island.
Yeah, big just, my notes, big just to be big doesn't seem useful. I think it's too big.
That's what I wondered, whether you thought it was too big or not.
Just too big to be useful. It takes up too much space.
It took up a lot of space, but I didn't think their living room seemed cramped.
No, it's a staging, because I was watching one of the episodes again today because I was trying to figure out what was missing from Team Aloha's place, and they were showing... or maybe some of the pictures I went through today. And I think their staging was really nice. They had a few chairs in there that actually still made it feel very spacious. Mm-hmm. The one miss was the two exterior doors, the curved, I actually have a different miss, but the two doors that went outside, the arched doors, definitely looked short.
And it made the whole room dark.
Yeah.
I think their kitchen and living space compared to all of their competitors definitely had the least amount of natural light. Mm-hmm. And I guess that's something that's very important to me. It didn't bother some people there.
Yeah, some people loved it.
But I felt the space was a little bit dark and not taking full advantage of the views that they had.
Yeah, and when I went back and I was looking at some of the pictures we took, I noticed that right next to the door to the mudroom was kind of the entryway to that second primary, which is also arched. And I thought, well, it would be nice to go ahead and put a door there because then you could take that hallway and you can reclaim it as part of the primary instead of just having a hallway.
Yeah.
And then you could have the symmetry of, because you've got the arched doorway with the door. And I think somebody that buys the house probably ought to do that. But yeah, I thought, again, the symmetry just wasn't there.
Okay. All right. Well, moving out of the kitchen and through the small arched doors to the patio, we get to their backyard. And in my personal opinion, I thought their backyard looked the biggest because they did the whole thing in grass, and even fencing it in for some reason made it seem like bigger and more cohesive. And another thing about their house that is just as big as it is on TV is that play set. That was one ginormous play set in that backyard.
It was big. And you weren't supposed to sit on the furniture or do anything, but kids were out there bouncing on that trampoline.
You could not keep kids off of the trampoline,
Hamlet Homes had everybody in their business out there. They had friends and relatives and anybody that put on a Hamlet Homes shirt and stand there and try to keep people from doing stuff, but they had way more people than they could do anything with. But yeah, I think that one of my favorite views is being on their back deck and looking over towards Team Aloha's backyard. And it just screams out that Team Aloha needs a fence. I mean, you look, and Cole and Chelsea's backyard looked great. The grass looked nice. The fence was beautiful. And then you look at this open wilderness at Team Aloha, and you're like, oof.
Yeah. Oof. There's nothing defining their yard. Like at least the Knights and even to some extent Alison and Michel had outhouses there that sort of define the space. But yeah, for Team Aloha, it just kind of
looked like everything was just going to blow away.
Yeah. Okay, so before we head to the upstairs of Chelsea and Cole, we're going to take a super quick break. We'll be right back. Okay, we go upstairs in Chelsea and Cole's house. I did notice that the timber that they had going up there, the decorative element in the stairwell, you could see the seams in it, right? So it didn't look awesome. Bad. And then when you got to the top, their 48-hour challenge, the tech room, it looked like about the level of enthusiasm that they had for doing that tech room showed off in the workmanship. Yeah. Some of the drawers were falling apart as we tried to pull them out.
Amy pulled this one drawer out, and like the handle's coming off, the front of it's falling off. I'm like, put that back.
Put that back before we have to pay for it.
Just like you almost broke a piece of artwork. What are you doing?
I was thorough. I was checking everything.
Yeah, and then they had the two small refrigerators on either side of the desk below the cabinets.
Why do you need two refrigerators in an upstairs playroom? I mean, it was just, I know it's symmetry, but it just seemed like lazy thinking. Well, we've got one refrigerator. Let's put another one over here. And they never showed those refrigerators on TV.
I don't believe so. I mean, obviously they showed the room, but they didn't call them out for sure. Mm-hmm. It definitely looked as as uninspired as uninspired gets.
So then let's move into the room that I had a lot of problems with, but some people went into it and they loved it, which is the bunk room. I think every time when we were there on a Friday, you could actually kind of move around. When we were back there on Saturday, it was a zoo. You were in a line. It was like a Disney ride. It's like you're in a line, you're going up the stairs, you're going through one room, then you go through the next. Oh, you don't want to go to that room? Well, too bad. You're in the line. This is where it's going. So on Friday, we actually had a little bit more space. And yeah, when we got in the room, there was like this grandparents in there going on about how it was a great room. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is a house for grandparents. But there was a younger people that were in there later, and they thought it was great. That didn't even bother them that there wasn't window treatments over the windows. She likes to get up when the sun comes up. Well, do you want your kids getting up when the sun? Yeah.
Didn't ask her that.
So, I mean, that's a problem with that, right? The bunks were right up against the windows in the front of the house. And so there was no way to block the window when you were in the bed. And secondly, if you were out on that front patio,
you got to look in on everybody.
The back, in the bunk room, so that there wasn't a lot of privacy there. And also, they did add a window on the side of that room, so they had some natural light, but they were blocking the beautiful windows and beautiful view from the front of the house by putting those bunk beds there. So I was thinking that since there were the two unfinished rooms in the basement, those really would have been a much more optimal place to put a bunk room, because you wouldn't be blocking anything. You could have, bunks to your heart desire. But they didn't actually do those spaces. So maybe that was Chelsea and Cole's original plan. They wanted to do a bunk room. And since the only extra bedroom they did was that front bedroom, that's where they had to put it.
Maybe.
So bunk room idea, good idea, especially given what they were trying to accomplish with their house. But
bad execution.
But if you thought that it blocked the window, and if you thought there were no window coverings there for people sleeping, you would be correct. It was just as it was on TV.
Yeah, the funny thing about the whole privacy thing is that there are two curtains on each set, right? You got the curtain in front of the bunk, you got the curtain on the side. Nothing over the window. And the two upper bunks, they had to build, because it was open, because there was the window there, they actually had to build a little fence as part of the bunk bed so that you wouldn't fall out. So actually, if you were in the top bunk, you were a little disadvantaged over being in the bottom bunk. And I still, I had glasses since I was 5. I don't know where I'd put my glasses. If I'm a kid and I'm in one of these bunk beds, what do I do with my glasses?
Well, okay, all right. So I think, again, those are, we are trying not to be opinionated, but those are certainly our opinions on the bunk room. But some people absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So moving on to their main bedroom suite, the little window that they put over the top of the bed that was meant to look like a picture of the mountain really did work. You walked in there, and that it framed the mountains.
Yeah, that was not TV magic.
No, not TV magic at all. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
I will say
still no window covering.
With their bedroom, they did. You couldn't really see it on TV, but they did some sort of paint treatment on the wall, textured paint on the wall.
It had kind of a textured paint.
And it looked good, but the only challenge I had with it is they did the whole room in the ceiling, and the fireplace was all done in this very light colored textured paint. And then the timber that they put, the two tunnels from the room, was a very similar color. So it was a calm room, but they're very monochromatic, I would say.
Yeah, and my notes were when I went back and looked at it, did they do the fireplace wall? Because it kind of looked like they did the ceiling and the side walls, but it looked like the fireplace wall might have been done a little differently, but maybe it wasn't.
Yeah, in my pictures it looked like it was done the same way.
Because I just was looking at the picture where you're looking towards the fireplace and then seeing the two curved passageways. It just looks disjoint.
Well, I think the two curved passageways, when you're laying in bed and you see the fireplace and the two curved passageways, to me, I thought that had nice symmetry and it looked pretty. From a practical perspective, you've got this whole part of the bedroom with the second curved area that just is essentially serving as a tunnel to go out to the patio. And then you've got the two small closets. You walk through the
smaller than
the
on
closets
TV.
Are smaller than on TV.
Oh my gosh.
And one thing that you can't see on TV, which would drive me crazy.
There's no way they could get a camera in there to film this.
I don't know how they managed to do it. But they also had, instead of just having hanging spaces, they invested in glass doors that you had to open to get to your hanging clothes. Well, the glass door opened into the door that you had to open to get into the closet. So if you were in the closet and you wanted to get a shirt or a dress or whatever off your hanging rack, you would have had to close the door to the closet in order to open the door to the hanging rack to get down your clothes.
To get your clothes out, then close the door.
Then close that again, and you'd barely have space to get dressed in that closet. It was so small, and then open the door again.
Yeah.
So it was. They did not have adequate storage for two people, in my opinion, and also just that whole configuration. I don't know why, given the size of these closets, they invested in those glass doors over the hanging closet. It was much more of a hindrance than it was, a help.
And they had the upper storage had doors on it too. I don't understand that. So in both closets they did that.
Yeah.
Behind the door when it's open
behind the door,
is
there was another
doors.
Door.
And both closets they were just really, really small.
Yeah. For a master bedroom in a house of that size. Yeah.
Now I don't think I heard anybody say these closets are nice. I think this might be the one thing where every comment was the same. These are too small. Yeah. And you're talking about, there's, not to get into the judging yet, but just apparently there's quite a bit of consternation about who won. And people are feeling like maybe Chelsea and Cole got ripped off. I think our studio is bigger than those closets.
Yeah, probably.
And it's a 5,500 square foot, $1.4 million house, and you've got 6 feet of square space, and I mean it's just too small of a closet for that size of a house.
Yeah, and then on the other hand, they have a huge bathroom. A couple decisions in the bathroom. I'd forgotten that they actually put hanging mirrors in front of the window.
That's easily forgotten.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about Chelsea and Cole that they like to put things in front of the window. But instead of having the mirrors on the opposite wall where you would, have the window, the natural light backlighting you would be staring into the natural light, and you were also blocking the window with these mirrors. And then the other thing that I didn't notice on TV, but I definitely noticed there, is they had a vanity in the bathroom, but the counter for the vanity was the same height as the vanity on the sink. So ladies, you know what this means, right? If you are sitting there at the vanity, your face is just above the counter as you're trying to do your makeup, right? So normally you have a vanity lowered and not the same height as the counter.
Yeah, there did seem to be a lot of storage in the bathroom, which I guess you would have to use for your clothes because there's just no room. You'd have to have dressers, so your clothes would be everywhere. You'd have to have dressers in the bedroom.
There wasn't room in the bedroom for a dresser, though.
Oh, that's true too.
Yeah, no, you'd have to utilize.
You'd have to have
in
these hanging impediments coming down from the ceiling where your clothes were swinging around.
Probably in front of the window.
In front of the window. Yeah.
So now I know we've been sort of ragging on their bedroom a little bit, but these are just the nitpicks that you can't see on TV in terms of how you would practically use the house.
Right.
One thing that they did that was awesome, and I don't think they got full credit for it, was putting that pergola on the balcony off of the bedroom.
It was definitely made a difference being out on the deck.
It was a hot, sunny day when we were there, and we went out on their balcony, and I thought we could have just sat on their balcony and relaxed and had a lemonade for hours, right? Whereas the other balconies, you'd go out, you'd be like, it's hot, I'm done, I'm going back in. So that pergola made a big difference.
Yeah, and I guess the pergola was nice. My notes here also that they had hanging rods in the closet that were higher than Amy could reach, and
there was nowhere to put a footstool.
Yeah, and then I've completely forgot they had a washer and dryer in the bathroom, and there was a door in front of it. And the first day we didn't even see it.
Yeah,
didn't even see it. Walked right by it, and then Amy's like, "Oh, there's a door. Oh, there's a washer and dryer." We heard everybody else say, "Oh yeah, that's right. There's a washer and dryer."
No, so they did.
So it was nicely hidden.
They did the sauna and they did the washer and dryer, and they had this huge bathroom. But they didn't have adequate closet space. So they just, I feel, space utilization there was a bit of a problem.
Well, and when you start looking at the competition was appraised value. And one of the things that's going to be a high marks on your appraised value is the master suite. I mean, so any dings in the master suite will cost you.
Yeah.
Any mistakes.
All right,
that are expensive to fix.
So it's
like having a small closet.
Yeah, there was really no way to enlarge
There's no
those
way to
closets.
fix that.
So, yeah. So let's go down, down, down into Chelsea and Cole's basement. So the first thing that struck me about the arcade room is that was a pretty big room, actually. That was one space that looked as big as it was on TV.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so, all the games were kind of fake except for the basketball game, which was a little clunky.
It was a hoop.
It was a hoop.
There was. I mean, it wasn't really a game because there was no way to. I mean, you have to score it yourself. They didn't even have those little counters there, like an abacus, in order to count it. You had to be like, did you have 5 or 6? Oh, I had 7.
So, but
it did look just as cheap as it seemed like it was gonna be.
But if you wanted to take like all the arcade games out and everything and just make that a playroom, it would have been a great size playroom.
Oh yeah.
And I mean,
and easy to take that stuff out because it's not a fixed anything.
The carpet for a playroom would have been fine. You wouldn't see dirt in it or anything. So I think it was a good space for kids for sure.
Yeah. My question being that the platform that they had the arcade games on, would you really want that in a playroom? But you could get around that.
Yeah. And so then in their kitchen living area in the basement, I thought the kitchen did look good. That quartz or granite that went like all the way up to ceiling was sharp. The dark appliances with that counter looked good.
Yeah.
The inexplicable shuffleboard island, I do not get.
Yeah, I think we ragged on that.
But there was actually sand in it when we were looking at it. So not only is there a shuffleboard thing there's sand in there.
But that's what's in a shuffleboard.
So, but then you've got sand in your kitchen. I just, I don't know.
But you have to have sand in it so that the things slide. I mean, that's just part of shuffleball. It's just a bad idea. And there was no real space to do prep or to set out food except that little bar where people were going to be supposed to be sitting. It was just bad. It was as bad in person as it was.
But one thing, Stephen, that I think you questioned on TV, but we verified when we got there, is there was adequate space around the pool table to play pool.
Yes, okay. There was. There was absolutely plenty of room. High marks.
All right, so that is a summary of Cole and Chelsea's house, what looked the same and what looked different. We're going to take a quick break and walk next door to look at Team Aloha's piece of work. Okay, so coming up to Team Aloha's house, it looked great in person on the outside. The black paint with the wood really looked sharp. And they actually put a little planter in front of their house with the house number. They were the only ones other than Michel and Alison who did anything like that. Okay, the other real wow factor in the front of their house was that big black pivot door. That was stunning. It looked much better in person than it was on TV. Now, I know some people have problems with pivot doors because they take up a lot of space and you can't put anything behind it. And I guess if you have a pet, you have to keep the pet from going through both sides of the door. But just as a statement piece, it was gorgeous. Okay. But when we get into Tristan's and Kamohai's house, I think we might as well just talk about the big elephant first.
Yeah.
The layout. They did so many changes to the layout in this house. A couple of them worked out in its favor, and a couple absolutely did not. And you can't really see how disjoint the layout is based on the changes they've made on TV, because they don't really walk you through all the ins and outs in the hallways. Yeah. They just show you the spaces, right?
And they weren't big on showing bathrooms or toilets, so they never showed this part of it.
So, we did get to see the powder room, but what we didn't see is that, okay, you go into their house, they'd taken away what was the powder room in order to make that front office bigger. All right, fine, it's bigger. It's a small room, so making it a little bit bigger is not such a bad idea. But what this means is that to get to the powder room, you have to walk down the front hallway, past the stairway, and then you go down this little, long, narrow hallway that leads to the powder room. So all the way across the kitchen and across the new pantry that they did, you have to walk all the way down that hallway and turn left in order to get to the powder room. And it's just weird, and it's also wasted space. I think I counted off, that's probably like 18 feet of square feet of wasted space at least by making that decision.
Yeah, it was a long hallway, and oddly, I don't know if it was 18 feet, but it was very long.
Well, square feet.
Square feet, okay, yeah. So then they had grass cloth down the one side, and there were two lights on light similar, I think that's in the bedroom, or the primary and main, whatever it's called. So there's grass cloth down one side, and then there are these two lights, and they should have just like closed all that off, made it part of something, or had to do a little bit of a different design. That was very weird.
It was weird.
It was definitely weird.
And then their dining room didn't really work. They were always talking on TV about the dining room being weird, and it just was kind of odd. Like you walk down the hallway from the front door, and there's the dining room table just sitting there. There's no wall or no way to define the space. It's not like it's cramped, but it's kind of like the dining room is in the hallway. I don't know. Yeah. It's hard to describe how that feels. And, not putting a chandelier or anything on top of the dining room table, it didn't look well planned. So
yeah, I guess the one thing that we talked about was all of the specific artwork on the wall there next to the table, and that looked fine when we were there. It looked overly crowded on TV, but when we were there in person, I don't think we had a problem with any of that.
Yeah. Now I was worried that because they put that second kitchen behind the kitchen, their kitchen would seem small, but it really didn't. I thought their kitchen was fine. There was lots of storage. I loved the fact that they put the sink against the back wall leading out to the porch, and they had the pass-through there.
Yep.
I will say I would have liked to have seen the counter on the other side of the pass-through be a little bit wider. It was only like 12 inches wide, so you didn't have a lot of space to actually put dishes out there if you were handing them through the pass-through, or have people sitting there eating or having a drink or whatever. So, but that's a minor thing.
Yeah.
And I will say, their fireplace in their living room was one of the best things in all the houses. They used all these different woods to decorate the front of the fireplace, and it looked pretty on TV, but it just looked so breathtaking and so calming. I love the way they decorated their living room with the underlighting of the shelves and just the colors in that beautiful fireplace. But Stephen was right. You don't always hear me say this every day. Their staging was abysmal.
Oh, yeah, that's right, because the couch came out into the area that you had to walk by to go anywhere in this room.
Yeah, so to get their island, the long edge of their island was parallel to the living room, right? And so the four, I think just three chairs that they had on the island,
bulky
where the back
chairs.
of those chairs faced the living room. And what they did is they picked big, bulky, padded chairs to put up against that island, and then they moved the couch past the rug that they had defining the living room. So net, and I'm not exaggerating here, you had literally about a foot of space between the back of those chairs on the island and the couch to walk out through and go to the deck. And everyone was struggling through this.
Yeah, I think it's the one kitchen living room area where people were on top of each other trying to walk around. The other kitchens, living areas, people were able to freely kind of move around between themselves. But
it was a total
it was a backup.
Point.
People going one way, people going another. You had to sit there and kind of go, which way are you going? Because even if you were going in front of the stove, there wasn't really a lot of room for two people to pass. And that could have just been fixed by staging. They could have just had stools underneath under the island there that weren't sticking out. They could have had a slightly smaller couch or pushed the couch a little closer to the fireplace. So, it's a shame because the living room was really beautiful. Yeah.
Okay, so going out into their backyard, first of all, the red rocks were not as red as they looked on TV.
Yeah,
they looked kind of brown. I think somebody who went to BYU, would you be happy to live in that house? You would not be.
Saw a lot of BYU shirts. So.
Yeah, there were a lot of no one was complaining. Then the people
Utah
in the BYU
State,
were,
which I guess is blue as well.
About it. There was a missing cold plunge from the backyard, and we actually found that Alison and Michel's cold plunge were missing.
Yeah.
So maybe the cold plunges were just borrowed for TV because they were all gone by the time we got there.
Yeah, forgot to notice that they weren't there and completely blew it on asking somebody from Hamlet Homes about that.
Yeah.
And the shower and the enclosure were all part of the auction, so that's going away too. That's going away too. Yeah, a number of things are not going to be there. I think Chelsea and Cole's house has got the least number of things that are disappearing from it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
No one's moving that place set anywhere.
Yeah.
Now, and I did not think that their patio seemed small. A lot of people complained that because of the hot tub, it made the patio seem small. I thought the patio was fine. They had plenty of seating. They had a place you could eat. I mean, I suppose if you went and had 40 people out there for a party, it might have been small, but you could have spilled over to the backyard.
Well, and I think the way they had put the hot tub in there was that they had poured a concrete slab underneath it, and so the hot tub was sitting on that as opposed to being resting on top of the wood. And so it was very flat. And I think you could, if you really wanted to, you could kind of rig something up to have a little platform there and you could sit on it. You could have additional seating there, not if you wanted to use the hot tub.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think that there was a remedy for that I think having the hot tub that accessible it makes it an even trade-off.
Okay. So another thing we learned while we're there, while Cole and Chelsea's concrete pad for the camper never materialized, apparently a concrete pad did materialize under the pickleball court because when Team Aloha put in the pickleball court, they did not have a concrete pad and it was unusable. They had the sports court, but the ball wouldn't bounce. So Hamlet Homes actually went in after the fact and laid down a concrete pad under the pickleball court to make it usable.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so let's take a super quick break and we will move on to the moss wall. Okay, so going upstairs in Team Aloha's house, immediately as you start to climb the stairs, you see little bits of moss underneath. And underneath the moss wall, there are pieces of the moss wall that have all broken off.
And going down the stairs, going down the stairs under the moss wall,
Now, Hamlet Homes had signs all over the place that says, if you touch the moss wall, you will be kicked out immediately. However, this did not stop every young child that went by that moss wall from touching it in some way. It's irresistible to children,
as you pointed
even
out,
babies.
There wasn't Well, I brushed up against it a couple of times because there was no room to get by people.
Yeah, because the staircase is narrow, too.
The staircase is narrow. I'm turned sideways trying to get by people, and I brushed up against it a couple of times, too. So it was...
I think our concerns about the placement of the moss wall are valid, especially since the staircase is more narrow than you expect. If you're going up and down that staircase all day, maybe with a basket of laundry or something, you are going to bump into that moss wall no matter how careful you're being, and that part of the moss wall is going to take a beating. And if you have young children or they have their friends over, they are going to touch the moss wall. It's just irresistible to them. Yeah. So, it would be better if they would have done the moss wall in a place that was unreachable. I will say one thing I really liked about their stairway. I love their chandelier. They didn't really show it on TV, but they had, I think, the most beautiful entryway chandelier of anybody.
They did. It had the most height to it. It wasn't necessarily the tallest of chandeliers because the other ones would have like 2 rings and nothing between, but their chandelier actually had height to it, which looked really good.
Yeah. Now, the kids' playroom, I think when we watched the episode, I thought that the little mountain display that they put there looked unfinished and kind of cheap. It actually looked better in person. I mean, the kids' playroom did look really cute. So if the challenge was designed a playroom, and I think it was good. They kept saying it had hidden drawers. The drawers were not hidden. They
had handles on them.
There were handles. If there are handles, it's not hidden. Yeah.
And they made something about it being a hidden room, but I mean, you just see all you could do is sit right in where that opening was there. There wasn't any way to go behind all of that stuff because there were drawers. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. The whole description of that seemed weird.
Okay, so let's talk about their main suite, which I think is another instance where their usage of space was just a little bit challenged. Like they had that when they swapped the bathroom and the bedroom, they had that pillar that they weren't counting on that they couldn't move, and they ended up making that a foyer. The foyer is actually pretty sizable. I think the foyer is also bigger than our studio that we're sitting in here. And so that's just kind of wasted space. It's an entryway to the bedroom, and you can go from the foyer either to the bathroom on the left or the bedroom on the right. But then in addition to the foyer that was a link between the bedroom and the bathroom, they put doors on either side of the closet. The closet sat between the bedroom and the bathroom behind the foyer.
It was a pass-through closet.
And it was a pass-through closet. So they wasted closet space by putting 2 doors in there. And between the foyer and the 2 doors in the closet, there just wasn't enough room in that closet for 2 people.
Yeah, I think, and I think probably 3 of the teams had the same situation. You've got this hallway that goes down to where you turn and go into the bedroom. And there's no reason why you couldn't put the door to your entryway, door to your bedroom and make that hallway part of it. Now, what would have happened with the Kalamas is that when you walk down that hallway and you turn right to go into the foyer, what's on the other side of that wall is a linen closet. And they could have taken that out, and then there would have been more room. But again, this was another one of the places where it was really hard to get by people trying to get into the bedroom, trying to get out of the bedroom, trying to go through the closet. And the closet really wasn't that big. It might have been big enough for one of us, or if it would probably be big enough for Amy. So maybe a little larger than I would need, but it was not really that big because you had the washer and dryer in there. So yeah, that was it was just a design challenge that they never was able to rise to meet.
Yeah, I think that pillar threw them for a loop, and if they'd had more time, they would have come up with a more elegant solution there. I mean, the colors and everything that they chose for their bedroom and even for the foyer were nice. I have to say I didn't love the see-through fireplace as much as I thought I would. It's a nice idea to have an indoor-outdoor fireplace and sit out on the deck, but you did give up some of that beautiful view that Jonathan and Jordan definitely took advantage of in their bedroom by closing it off with the fireplace. So on TV, I love the idea, but actually seeing these houses and seeing how lovely the views were and everything, I think they probably would have made a better choice moving the fireplace and having that door open.
Yeah, and in our niche wash, I guess I forgot to mention, Cole and Chelsea did not have a niche in their shower. You'd have to put everything on the windowsill. Here in Team Aloha's, they had two small square niches on both sides. One, I guess, for the shower, one for the tub.
Which you could not reach if you were in the tub.
Which you could not reach if you were in the tub. And then outside the shower area, when you you couldn't reach around, but around the glass, they had two hooks, and they had one hook on the other side. It's just kind of just the little things here and there that just kind of didn't make sense. I have to say,
their bathroom design seemed a little shipshod.
Yeah.
I think they were so busy trying to figure out this problem with the foyer and figure out the bedroom and the closet and everything that the attention to detail in the bathroom just wasn't there.
Right.
They had the big wet room with the double shower and then the bathtub, but the bathtub was black. And one of the ladies who was touring it with us said,
it black?
She said, look, they're going to get soap stains and hard water stains all over the outside of this bathtub because the shower's in there. And I couldn't agree more. It would be a pain in the neck to keep that clean. And then the same lady called the mirrors that they had over the sinks in the bathroom, I think her word was chintzy. Mm-hmm. And I have to agree. There were those mirrors that had a light in the mirror, just one strip at the top, kind of small mirrors for this gigantic bathroom.
Yeah.
And just kind of an indifferent, crookedly hung lighting fixture over the sinks. It just didn't look pulled together in the bathroom. And, I think I've said this before. Some of the things about, Team Aloha's house are just breathtaking, but then they have misses on other things. And I think, when you saw the master bath on TV, it looked pretty and everything. But when you see it up close, there's just a lot of little technical problems with what they did.
Yeah, they did look like the center light in the room was a light with a Bluetooth speaker in it, which I would appreciate.
Now, see, that was a nice touch.
And nice touch. Didn't get any credit for it, at least on the show. But it, yeah.
Now, we've talked a little bit about how they've made mistakes in their use of space, but one thing they did that was brilliant is that when you get to that upstairs landing in this house, there's the room area that they did for the 48 challenge, but there's also a pretty sizable space on the other side of where the chandelier is that's not really a room, but just basically a lot of wasted space on the second floor. And that's where Tristan and Kamohai decided to move out the guest room to take up that hallway.
Right.
You don't notice that hallway missing at all. It doesn't tighten up anything. You lose one linen closet, but there's a billion linen closets in this house. And that's what they turned into that shelving area that they had in their guest room. So as a result of this very smart, and then you lose the entry to the from the hallway, but you don't really need that. So I thought everyone should have done that.
Yeah.
They should have just expanded that bedroom, taken up that extra room. I mean, can you imagine with Michel and Alison if they'd taken that extra room and made the gym that big? It would have been fantastic.
Yeah, they basically just continued the wall, and so the wall actually came to the overlook. Mm-hmm. And so then you had a corner because those didn't line up, but the glass, the railing came to an end, and then there was a little bit of a corner. It was probably maybe about 6 inches, but at least then you've got the consistent wall down the side, and so it looks very cohesive.
Yeah, it looked great. But again, they had staging problems in this room.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
So, I mean, the flowered wallpaper and the dark walls looked way better than I thought it would.
Yeah.
The sliders opening up to the balcony, beautiful, lots of natural light. For some unknown reason, they chose to stage it with this bed that the edges of the bed stuck out probably 8 to 12 inches. Yeah, probably 12 inches from the mattress all the way around. So as a result, the bed didn't really fit in the space. No. And if you wanted to go see the bathroom, you literally had about an 8-inch little corridor. You had to kind of tiptoe around the bed to get to the bathroom. I mean, it was ridiculous, and it was all staging. Like there was no reason that you needed to put that bed there.
Yeah, there was a nice light, kind of a thin light, but kind of long, that was by the door as you would get to the bathroom, and that light had taken quite a beating because people were running into it because they were tripping over
the bed,
and it was there was barely room for one person, so you'd have to stand there and wait for somebody to walk down there, and then look at the bathroom and then come back out. The other thing I noticed was that the side lights for the bed hung from the ceiling, and as far as I could tell, I wasn't sure where the switches were for them. So I never saw them.
And they also had a couple of hanging chairs on the balcony there that I don't think were ever shown on TV. So if you go out to that bed,
they did. Yeah.
Did they show those? Okay,
you saw it on TV.
I guess I just didn't remember them.
Yeah, I remember seeing it on TV.
So when we go down into
in the that little niche area, what I noticed was that up in the corners of the niche area, they had this big fixture on either side, and it was actually sitting on the shelf on one side. So it was too big of a fixture for having the floating shelves.
Oh, okay. I didn't even notice that. Good catch, Stephen. Okay, shall we go down to the basement?
Sure.
Okay, I do not know what happened to their winning basement from the end of filming to when we did the tour, but things disappeared. On the TV show, there is an island in the kitchen. There is a hood over the stove. There is a little table over there. When you go into that room in the open house, it was all empty. The whole wall behind the stove was empty. There was no hood, no nothing. There was no island. There was no little table. There was no decoration. It just looked like this, sort of corner kitchen in a big empty part of the room.
Yeah, they had obviously patched part of the ceiling, and if you looked over the stove, you could see where they hadn't gotten cleaned up very well. Parts of the wall still had kind of like this white dust on it or something. But just this whole open area that was just vanished. Or open area that just came there. And so the whole bunch of stuff just vanished.
I guess the hood that they put in for judging was decorative. It wasn't really functional. And that's where they put those cheap, sticky stuff. Yeah. And so I guess because that got ragged on in the judging, they took it down. But
it looked awful.
They didn't put anything to replace it. And I don't know what happened to the island.
No idea why the island or the table disappeared.
Yeah. So, the rest of that room was fine. It kind of looked like what it was on TV. If you go into the theater room, it was every bit as small as you'd think it would be on TV. You could fit 4 adults in there, maybe, a family of 5 if you had a couple kids.
Well, if you took out the chairs and just kind of sat on
a couch or something, you could have done it. But it was small for sure. Yeah. And the bar room behind it seemed bigger than the theater room to me. That was just a sitting area with a bar. As Stephen already described, they couldn't get clearance to make that a wet bar. Yeah. So it was just kind of a table with some space back there. And the wine room was very nice and very pretty, but it was just, I wonder if there wasn't a way they could have given more space to the media room and less space to that bar area back there. I don't know.
And behind the bar were these knee-height stools.
Yes.
That I had no idea what they're there for, because they were if I sat on them, which you don't know, I sit on them, I could have sat on them, and I think my head would have stuck up over the bar, and I'm about 6'2". I don't know what they're there for. Knee stools, it just inexplicably, there were these 2 very, very short stools.
Yeah. So anyway, it's it's a shame that we couldn't have seen that room like it was on TV, and I don't know what happened to the missing things. But that's the another thing I wanted to say about Team Aloha's house is that while the front with the black and the wood looked super sharp, they painted the whole rest of the house black.
Yeah.
So they really were team paint it black. We got it wrong.
Yeah.
And
it looked awful.
That did not look great. Like
No.
if you were standing behind the house, all you saw was black, right? So it would be nice to have seen some other accents there or something.
Yeah, something. Yeah, they had the opportunity when they were doing one of the balconies in the back that they could have added a little bit more color. But the thing is that the nice thing about it being black, the solar panels kind of melted away. You didn't really notice the solar panels, but because the batteries were white, they stand out a lot. I guess the other pieces of that that I noticed, they had around the fire pit, they had like this little pea gravel, look awesome. And one of the things I did go back and watch again today was on the judging of the second episode. And they called them out for having short doors on the entry to the office as you come in. When I went back and looked, I said, oh yeah, they are shorter than other things. But when I was standing there, I don't recall it being something noticeable because they're glass and it's the entryway and it's just there. So I didn't.
Yeah, I didn't notice it either. Maybe because of that big pivot door they put on, you weren't really judging those two together. That this difference in size didn't bother me. No. Oh, and we forgot to mention, it did look cool. They covered the pillars on the front porch in stone.
Oh, the puka
and this
lava.
Kind of hid the downspout.
It hid the downspout.
Where if you look at Cole and Chelsea's house, the downspout really stands out. So
yeah, and they kind of stand out
nice.
On the other three houses too. Yeah. And when I started looking at it again, it's just Cole and Chelsea's and Jonathan and Jordan's colors were so light. But it definitely hides it. So I mean that their front elevation looked really good.
Okay, Stephen. Well, we are going to visit the modern farmhouse in just a minute after we take a break. Okay, so stepping up to Jordan and Jonathan's house, on TV, the outside looked very plain and monochromatic. On TV, I thought it looked a little bit better because you notice the differences in the textures more. So it just looked like this nice light house.
Yeah.
They didn't really do anything special in the entryway.
No.
When you walked into the house, they
had the arched doorway going in.
The arched doorway going in was really pretty. And then, their office kind of looked like it was on TV. It looked smaller than on TV, but that's what all of them looked like. I will say that the Golden Swan was not as bad as you would expect from seeing it on TV.
All right.
I mean, it was kitschy or kitschy, whatever they say, but it was one of those things that if you own that house, everyone who came in would notice it, and it would definitely be a conversation piece. So you could replace it if you didn't like it, but it wasn't the most hideous thing we saw. I actually thought it was kind of fun.
Yeah, it looked okay. I guess by two kind of overall comments, my impression of Jordan during the show was just like he didn't seem to have a lot of interaction and whatnot. And so asked the people there at Hamlet Homes, and they said, oh, he is such a fun guy. And he was very animated, and but once you put the camera on him, he kind of freezes. And I guess that he told them, well, when he's doing his show, you can't see the audience. It's all black. And so, so it was just, kind of interesting to get the perspective from them that he's actually kind of a fun guy.
Well, I thought it was interesting that he's like this international superstar and he's a shy guy. He's camera shy. He doesn't really like it.
He was the one, I think they said that he was here and gone quite a bit because he had a lot of things on his schedule. So he was probably the designer that wasn't on site as much as other people.
Well, and actually they hinted that he was really just there to be like the sidekick for Jonathan. Yeah. He was not contributing a lot to the design work on the house.
And they did get them to sing once, but Jonathan said they could not film it. So, I guess my overall comment. Yeah, so that was nice to hear about them. Most people they seem to think that have a good time with the designers, which is nice.
And I guess Michel and Jonathan really are friends. They seem to be friends on camera, but they said they're buddies. They get along. So
and I guess one overall comment that we have about their house, getting back to talking about houses, was we have, constantly we would be looking at the woodwork and going, why why didn't they just come a little bit further? Why didn't it just come around? Why didn't they go around? So it looked like they stopped their woodwork a lot when they shouldn't have. And it really stood out, I think. So that's my 2 overall comments on their house.
Well, I want to say my biggest problem with their house, and I did not realize this on TV, is that there is no way to cook in that kitchen.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, the kitchen was awful.
That kitchen was designed to look good, but it was completely impractical. So if you're standing at that stovetop, you've got that arched stone over the stovetop, and on one side, I think you have a range, and on the other side, you have the refrigerator. There is no counter space at all.
Well, you got 4
next
ovens,
to the stove.
so everything you're doing is... Yeah.
No, but I mean, seriously,
and behind
if you need to put
sink.
down a spoon or you need to grab something while you're cooking, there's no place to put anything next to there. And there's no place to take a pot. And directly behind the stove is this giant sink.
Right, and that's 4 feet away.
Yeah. If you
you could get 2 people walking by each other just quite easily. That's one of the few places. It was really too far.
But if you're taking something off the stove, you can't put it next to the stove. There's no counter space. If you turn around, you've got the giant sink, so you've got to turn around, step over, and put it there. And all of your prep stuff and your ingredients, you're a cook, Stephen. I mean, if you want to just grab stuff and sprinkle it into your pot, you've got to go over. And, I mean, it was really not thought out by anybody who does a lot of cooking.
The island was too narrow, and then if you're standing across the room and looking down the edge of the island, you can see the stove. It's even offset from where the end of the stove is. So I just think it was just a bad layout.
Yeah, the kitchen was not a good layout.
And I know we've said this before. That was a table. It was not a second island.
Yeah, it was a table.
And it was not in a very useful spot.
And they had a very nice dining table. Like their dining area was actually really pretty. They put a window there. Yeah. It was very nice. And they had the nice tall curved doors in the back. So that area was good. But that kitchen, I guess if you were just standing there looking at the kitchen, it looked okay. But if you were going to actually try to cook a meal, good luck.
Yeah, I wasn't sure why there was a glass door on the front of the pantry. And just to close the book on this, that chalet door looked as bad in person as it did on the show.
No difference. Looked like it did on TV.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so if we're going upstairs, their chandelier was kind of, whatever. If their area, their 48-hour area where they had the sort of spa area was very pretty and relaxing. And actually on TV, it looked like there was a big contrast between the wood in the spa area and the wood design that they had going up the back of the stairs. But standing there, you really didn't notice it.
Yeah, if you wanted to see the difference, you could.
Yeah.
But if you were just walking by it, it'd never occur to you that they were a different color.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I want to talk about, I think, what was one of the best parts of their house, which really did show in person, and that was their master suite. Their main suite. So you enter that. You didn't really see this on TV. When you enter it, there's a little hallway with the curved mirror there. On one side, you have the bathroom, and on the other side, you go through 2 walk-in closets. They swapped the bedroom and the bathroom so that the bedroom went directly out to the balcony, and they made the smart decision to do the fully articulating doors from the bedroom to the balcony. So when you were laying in bed, you got that gorgeous view, whole wall of windows. Really looked fantastic.
The curtains on either side of the bed were gone. That was one thing that had been taken down.
Yes.
Was missing,
the mortar headboard was not as bad as it was on TV.
Yeah.
You still had those black planks on the ceiling, which I would take down immediately if I lived there. But the stupid curtains, the curtains were not there anymore. The fireplace looked good. And the first time we've seen 2 houses so far, this is the first house we had that actually seemed to have adequate closet space.
Yeah, if the one thing I noticed was the shelving was really deep. It had, I stuck my arm in there, I took a picture of it. Not good enough to be able to estimate, but it was probably about 22 inches deep. So it looked like you would be able to, if you had say a stack of shirts, you could have two, depending on how you stack them, 2 or 3 lined up behind each other. So again, the space is usable, and you can store your stuff there, or maybe you put your, maybe you put your out of season stuff on the back part of the shelf and the stuff that you're using on the front part of the shelf. But they still have plenty of closet space. It's just the one thing I did notice with
good
the
amount
shelves.
of hanging space.
Good hanging space, yes. Good closets, and then having the really deep shelves didn't bother me. At least you've got storage in your closet, which is what a closet is for. So.
And then their bathroom was big, big, big. It looked big on TV. It was big in person. You had 2 long counters, one on either side. The shower was huge.
Yeah.
That big brass tub did not take up the whole room. There was still plenty of room to move around, dance the cha-cha, whatever you wanted to do. Or
you could even do that in the shower. The shower was definitely big enough for that.
And there was extra space sort of behind the door to the bathroom. They could have easily put a washer dryer in there, but lots of storage. So overall, not a lot of surprises in terms of what we saw in their bathroom.
The 2 niches in the shower for our shower watch. Yeah, the only I think probably the biggest miss for me in the bathroom, and this is nothing new. On the one side you had 3 arched mirrors, and then on the other side you had 1 mirror flanked by 2 windows, and the 2 windows were square. And I think that if you were really doing that right, and now that would be expensive, is you would have arched windows. I think we saw that last season, the arched windows across from arched mirrors, and I think that would have been better, but there was nothing wrong with the way it was.
Yeah, it was good. There was good symmetry. Okay, so moving down to their basement, when you go into their sort of green room lounge area, loved the cork wallpaper. I thought that was so cool. And I liked the fact that they had sort of just a small kitchen, and then they had a nice separate bar area. So if you're really using this as a hangout space and not a ADU, it was really nice. You could see people getting together, hanging out, having a nice gathering there.
Yeah, and the wallpaper was reflective in the white spots. So I'd put my hand up and kind of block the light, and so it would diminish and then come back. So really cool. It was very cool. Very, very nice space.
And then I also thought the music room was a nice space, too. I mean, you wouldn't have to use that for music. They had the paneling halfway up the wall. They had nice coloring in there. Yeah,
I mean, it's just a big open room with staging. It's basically because everything in that room was in the auction. All the guitars, the drum kit, all that stuff was being auctioned.
Yeah, you could have bought any of the things there. And there were things like you could have gotten a piece of Michel's art. There were little things from every house. And you could have, if you really wanted to, bought some of the Wayfair art they used. I don't know why you would do that and not just buy it from Wayfair, but I guess you could always say it was on the rock
I don't think it was signed or anything, but they also had the signed sledgehammers available for purchase.
From all 14.
Yeah, from all 14. It was kind of cool. I mean, and what it was, their charity is Homemade Utah, and we spent quite a bit of time talking to the Homemade Utah people while we were there on Saturday, and really nice people, really good effort that they're doing, and we had a good time chit-chatting with those guys too. The vocal booth, I went in there, I'm like, I'm going in here and I'm going to yell, and the first thing I did is yell and I heard an echo. So I think my original assessment of the lack of sound absorption is correct. So maybe it absorbed some, but I don't believe that what they did was a sound treatment.
Well, you could buy that house and put a wine room in there.
Yeah, we did decide that you could not. You might be able to put a drum in there if you put it sideways, a drum kit. But it was a little tight. Mm-hmm. It was a little tight getting in it with the. They had the easels and the mics, pop filters all lined up there, and so you did have to kind of turn sideways and scoot through to get in there. But I did it.
All right, good for you. All right, so moving to their backyard, there's one thing that wasn't really shown much on TV. They had some nice landscaping and a nice little water feature right in front of the back porch there, and they didn't show that very much, but that was cute. Their backyard was well-defined. They had grass in the middle, and then they had the planters on one side. You saw it on TV, right? The goat barn and the greenhouse.
Yeah, and there were goats when we were there.
There were goats. 3 goats. There was like a bigger goat and 2 like baby goats, so it was really cute seeing the goats out there. And the greenhouse was big lengthwise. They had a big dining table in there, but it was not very tall. I don't know how Jonathan,
he just stepped in and walked out.
He could not have gone anywhere but right in the center.
No, and I walked down the side and I was ducking under everything, and if somebody was sitting there, I'd been in trouble. So it's not very big, but both of those are also in the auction.
They do not come with the house. If you want the greenhouse or the goat barn, you could get them in the auction. The auction's probably closed now, but you could have gotten them in the auction if you really wanted them.
Yeah.
And just a little teaser, you also could buy the casita in the auction. And we will move on next to talk about the house with the casino, which is Alison and Michel's winning house. Be right back. Okay, let's talk about Alison and Michel's house and what was different and what impressed us in person that we didn't necessarily see on TV. First of all, I will say their house definitely had more curb appeal than the other houses. Putting that walkway from the street down to the house with the little plants on either side and the planter in front of the porch, it just looked more welcoming. No one else had a walkway. No one else had planters. So
the lights on either side of the French doors, which was lights on the patio, and the patio just seemed like a throwaway for Jonathan and Jordan and Team Aloha. Chelsea and Cole had a day bed, but they didn't have any lights out there. So, they definitely. I think this is where you see the fact that they really are designers. This is the attention to the detail, right? Something has a purpose. Something has a meaning, and something is important, even if it's not really that big of a deal. But it. You just see that when you walk up to their house. That walkway was great. The lights all look consistent.
And the French doors looked really cute on there. Yeah. And I also thought the round window over the door, they actually executed that. There was a round window.
Yeah.
And it was just something different. It did make the house look less boxy. So little touches like that. Right. The outside of their house definitely had the most curb appeal.
Yep.
Now, I will say one thing that I just didn't get was that sashimi door. I mean, it was just a big black door. If you really looked hard, you could see some burn marks on it. But I didn't get that much.
No, the whole thing was burnt. The color is of the non-burnt wood, I think.
So she overburned it?
I think she overburnt it. I think so. But it was basically just black, except in the notches where it may or may not have been. So Yeah, I
didn't get much out of that.
No, but it was big. It was a nice big door.
Now, when you walked into their door, just like every other house, the space was smaller than it seemed on TV. But having all of that oak paneling and oak flooring, it did look very beautiful and calming there. And honestly, that door to the office truly was a hidden door.
People missed it.
You didn't know
People missed it. Whoever was in the house before us,
you would not know to push there.
We pushed the door open, went in, and people that were already walking down the way goes, "Oh, wait a minute, that's right, there's a door there."
You really couldn't see it.
It was very nicely hidden, and then we closed it while we were in there, and it was pretty. It decreased the amount of sound coming into that room pretty well.
Quiet.
It was
all these people walking through the house, and you shut that pivot door, and it's a very quiet space. So if you wanted a space to get some work done, get some writing done, or whatever, it was a really lovely space with the French doors there. And that pivot door, I think, must have had a lot of sound absorption or something.
Yeah, it was pretty
quiet
nicely done. And then if if you're seeing customers in your home, then it's, that's in another nice office. Somebody can come to the French doors and come in, and they don't have to come through the other house, through the rest of your house. So I think it's a, nice little touch.
Now, we did have some fans of the show that told us they didn't like pivot doors, so we did test. And it did take a little bit of space there, right? So you couldn't, you had probably about 3 feet of clearance there that you couldn't have put anything, a little bit more than a normal door, right? So if that was important to you to have furniture there by the door or Christmas decorations or whatever you wanted to put there, that would be a problem. But it was a very cool feature, and it met the style of the house.
Yeah, I think the other problem that I have with it is that when you walked into the other houses, because you had these glass doors, the entryway felt open. This one really did feel closed, and felt like you were, it was pretty, but it did look very tight that, it's just kind of a short entryway. So.
Well, and then they also put those arches.
Right.
So you didn't have a straight view all the way down into the end of the house. You had sort of the arches that you went through to divide it.
Yeah, but it was nice.
Okay, so we have heard, as very experienced podcasters as we are, a lot of feedback about the green kitchen. And many people are like, I love green, but I hate that kitchen, blah, 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 right? I will tell you this. When you walk through the hallway, and because they had the arch doors, you don't really see all the way to the end when you first come into the entrance. When you walk down the hallway and you first step into that kitchen and you see the giant arch and the fully articulating doors out to the back patio, it really does take your breath away. I mean, that is a wow moment when you walk in there. Whether you like green or don't like green or whatever else, that decision to open that up and put the arch and have all the glass on the back of the house, really, really high-end, very beautiful.
And the thing that I tried to take a picture of this, I could not get my camera to take a picture of it. The green of the hood, the greens of that marble were closer than they appear on TV. And I tried doing a couple of filters, but I could not get anything to take a picture of what I was actually seeing because I thought they were so different, and they're really not. They're really fairly close.
They're very close, and it's not overwhelmingly green. On TV, it's like you're walking into Oz, but that green in the back of the stove doesn't go all the way up to the ceiling. Mm-hmm. And it's, it's definitely green, but it's not, to me, it's less green, if that makes sense, than it looks like on TV.
And skipping back just a second to the powder room on the way there, that was very dark. Mm-hmm. That was dark. You need more light in there. That was just really dark.
Okay. All right. Yeah, the powder room was dark. I would definitely put some can lights in there in addition to the light fixture they had if we had that house.
Yeah, I guess another call out here. Team Aloha had a built-in coffee maker, and so did Alison and Michel. They were the two teams that did it.
In the wall next to the laundry room, both of those teams chose to put some storage and a built-in coffee maker.
Team Aloha's coffee maker was by the pantry.
Okay.
So it was in a different spot. But because of where Alison and Michel put it, it kind of impeded on some of the space in the mudroom. And so the mudroom did feel very closed and almost unusable.
It was very small because of that coffee maker. Yeah. Now,
speaking, we've already gone past Team Aloha. Something else that was missing from Team Aloha was from their laundry room. When you're looking at their laundry room, they've got these cabinets.
It was half empty when you went through it.
Yeah,
they took cabinets out of it.
And they had this cabinet on the far right that was open. That was just gone.
We don't know. We don't know who was robbing furniture from Team Aloha, but there was quite a few things missing.
Yeah, that was missing, but it was not missing from Alison and Michel. Okay. That was just small. We kept measuring things out and looking at it and trying to figure out, because we were trying to figure out why it was so small.
Okay, and so if you're wondering, so people are like, how did they win? Blah, 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 blah. So they had a very high-end range. They had a high-end built-in coffee maker. They had a wine fridge. They had a separate freezer and refrigerator. You may have noticed in there, it looked like there were 2 refrigerators.
On either side
Actually,
of the
there was a full-size freezer and a full-size refrigerator in that kitchen.
And the wine cooler was built into the island.
Yeah. So there was a lot of built-in appliance there, which I think, and other people had things too, but I really think they had the most in terms of the high-end extra appliances in their kitchen. And that wasn't really highlighted on TV. Now, their pantry was just as stupid as it looked like on TV. Super narrow storage for some reason. So if you were looking to store your appliances in that pantry, good luck. The cabinets were not deep enough to actually put any decent size appliance in there.
Yeah. Yep. They did have some artwork in there for some reason, but I actually didn't notice it when we were in there. But when I was looking at the pictures, I'm like, oh. Here's art.
Yeah, the other good decision they did was they put a big window behind the sink. So if you were standing at the sink, that was even more natural light than you were already getting from the articulating doors. And if you're standing there at the sink, you're actually looking out the window and you have a pleasant view of the mountains and what have you as you're doing dishes. So I thought that their use of windows and lights throughout the house, I went and took pictures of the outsides of all the houses. And Alison and Michel were definitely the ones who made the most changes to the windows, opened up the most walls with articulating doors and what have you. And I think that was one of the secrets to their victory. The Knights and the Camelas made very few changes. Chelsea and Cole made a few changes, but one change they did, putting the big windows in front of the house, they hid those by bunk beds, so I don't know what was going on there. But anyway, so just that's another thing that they did that might not show up on TV. If you go around the outside of the house and count the windows from one to the other and look where they're different, they made a lot of changes in terms of lighting.
And speaking of the outside, the hot tub is also
missing.
Well, the hot tub was there.
The hot tub was there.
But it's part of the auction. It actually was bigger than I thought it was, but I think you'd have some trouble getting out. Okay. But
all right, but Stephen, before we go outside to the hot tub, I think we need to take one more break here. Okay, so moving out to the backyard, and if
where there's not a hot tub.
Well, the hot tub's being taken away. So the porch is done beautifully. They wrapped everything in cedar. It looks very nice, staged very well.
Yeah.
Blah blah blah. And then if you think they punted on the backyard with all that gravel, you're right. It does not look good.
Yeah.
It's not good.
Yep.
The only thing I will say is that the backyard is not as big as it appears on TV, so it's not quite like you're walking across a moonscape there, but not great.
But which just highlights that it wouldn't have taken that much to put some vegetation in there, like Jonathan Scott recommended, and it would have been better. Mm-hmm. Just thinking back to Jonathan and Jordan on the outside of that luxury bedroom that they had on the second floor, they didn't wrap the posts. And so, again, I think this is one place where, Alison and Michel wrapped the post in the cedar, so everything has this cohesive look. And, and then Jonathan and Jordan, again, stopped woodwork someplace that would have been a benefit.
Yeah. So, that was not good. The casita was actually pretty cute. You had 2 small bedrooms. You had one bathroom with a shower and one bathroom that was just like a powder room.
No closet.
No closet.
No closet.
And then you had a little kitchen with a little dining area. My favorite part of the whole casita, though, was that you could climb up the back of it, and they had a little porch on top of one of the sides. And that was really pleasant. Maybe I was tired at that point, but I could have sat up on that little porch for a while and just enjoyed the mountain views.
Now, the steps were incredibly steep. They were very steep. Mm-hmm. It was not the easiest thing to get up and down those stairs, but it was rather pleasant sitting up there at a nice little breeze. We could see the houses. Nobody else dared to come up there, so we were by ourselves.
A little privacy for once.
Yeah, a little relaxation.
But if you choose to buy Alison and Michel's house, you will not get the casita with it.
Nope.
It is being auctioned off separately. Yeah. You can buy it straight up for $100,000, I think.
I forget what the prices were.
The bid was like, at 64
I think a construction company
yeah.
was winning when we left. But,
yeah. So anyway, and also...
So the reason, I guess, because it's an ADU, and you can only have one ADU.
Yes.
Right?
So you
and the downstairs was an ADU, so they could not
zoned
have
as an
that.
ADU, so they could not have a separate ADU.
So then again... So we talked to them about this, about the exterior buildings that were not coming with the house. And we asked them, we said, well, was that part of the appraisal? And they said, and Hamlet Homes said, if you want to include that in who wins, you can. But when you say what the appraisal is, you cannot include those spaces because they can't go with the house.
Yes.
So, I thought maybe they had gotten some additional appraisal room because of the casita, but no, they were very adamant about that. So whether they were taken into account, don't know. That's HGTV's thing. But as far as the appraised value goes and who... and what appraised, they said it appraised for, that did not include any of those features that were going away.
The greenhouse, the goat house, the casita, none of those values were reflected in the appraisals.
Yes, yep.
So all I can think of is backyards do not add much to your appraisal value because, Chelsea and Cole had a really nice backyard. Everything was staying. They had the fence and everything else. And yet that wasn't enough to take them over the top, right? So I'm not an appraiser. It would be interesting to interview an appraiser on this podcast sometimes and see how it works. But, that might make the house more sellable, but it doesn't, it couldn't have been that big of an influence on the appraised value because Alison and Michel's backyard was not good.
Yeah. Well, I think, what was it? We were told that $50,000 was trade out, right? Mm-hmm. So it wasn't money that they quote unquote got to spend. It was things that they got to trade for different things. And, I guess Cole and Chelsea traded for stuff that they get to keep with the house versus something that's going away in the case of Alison and Michel. But I think, again, in those cases, since the $50,000 got included into the basis of the house and they spent $50,000 and what they spent it on was something that was not going to have any bump in the appraisal, they would technically get nothing above the basis for that.
Anyway.
Long story short, we still don't know.
Yeah, that's right. That's a long way of saying we don't know what we're talking about.
but we took a lot of time doing it.
Yeah, but we do know that the casita was not included in the valuation. So moving to the second floor, what did you think of the 48-hour challenge room in Alison and Michel's house?
Yeah, I thought that looked fine. The one thing that I called out was in the judging, Jonathan Scott mentioned that they needed a bottom plate on the cabinets, and voila, Hamlet Homes put the bottom plate up there. And I thought the color looked good. I thought it looked fine.
Yeah. And I thought the artwork on the wall actually looked better than I thought it would. It looked kind of, I wasn't in love with it on TV. It looked fine.
Yeah, at least one of those pieces, I guess the pieces that Michel made were in the auction. Okay. So whichever things they got from Wayfair, staying with the house, whatever he made, at least one of the pieces were in the auction. Okay. As well as that Tristan and Kamohai's cutout for the mountains. Mm-hmm. So the artwork that they made also
we knew that would be in the auction. Now, looking at their workout room, chef's kiss. I know you hate it when people say chef's kiss.
I'm just tired of that.
Chef's kiss. It was beautiful. The paneling and the dark ceiling and the fully articulating walls out to the balcony.
Looked great.
I would love to work out there. They should have extended it like the Camel has done to make it a bigger workout room. That was my only beef with that space. But
I thought the
cool.
mirror should go all the way to the floor. It stops about 2 feet above. So to actually be useful in a gym, people sitting on the floor stretching, like to check your pose. I think it would have been better if it went to the floor, but it looked great. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the posts were wrapped outside of it. Yeah,
it was really well done. So moving on to the bedroom, this was a space that was big. It looked as big as it did on TV. You had the whole platform area and up with the bedroom, and then practically a whole living room down there with the fireplace. I thought the colors were good. I thought the space looked nice. And they had a couch that backed up to that step. So I thought that was sort of a safety measure so you wouldn't fall off the step. You'd run into the couch first. But what was your thought about the bedroom?
Yeah, I thought the bedroom looked good. The bedroom was definitely as big as it seemed, if not somewhat bigger. They had sitting spaces on at least one side of the fireplace, which is nice. The artwork behind the headboard, which I kind of started liking a little bit more over the course of the show, I thought looked really, really good.
And a nice big window they put by the bed.
Yeah. I like the main suite.
And they had a good closet. So
right, and the closet was not that awkward to get in and out of as it seemed on TV.
On TV, it seemed like it was really narrow. It was long and narrow, and it would be really uncomfortable being in there. Because trust me, Stephen and I did used to have a closet that was so narrow it would make you claustrophobic. Yeah. This closet was plenty wide. 2 people could pass in it.
There was one turn where it went. It was a little tight, but I could walk through it just fine.
It wasn't bad at all, and it was plenty big for a closet. So
they should have when you walk into the closet, the cabinets on the right side should have gone to the ceiling. They did not, but that's a little bit of a nitpick. They're the only team to put in a high-tech toilet.
Well, wait. I just wanted to say, as far as the closets go, the 2 veteran teams had adequate closet space, and the 2 rookie teams did not have adequate closet space.
Yeah.
So I think, for some reason, main suite closets seem to be a problem for first-time teams. Everybody seems to fail on it. But Alison and Michel, their closet was fine. It was not as narrow as it appeared on TV. And yes, Stephen, they had a high-end toilet, which was never featured on the show. Yeah. But those toilets go for $1,000 or so.
Yeah.
And so, that was added value to the bedroom that probably went into the appraisal. Everybody else had just regular toilets, right?
Yeah.
And their bathroom, again, if you don't like green, you'd probably hate it. But the tub in front of those curved doors to the balcony was very pretty.
Yep.
It was plenty big enough.
Oh,
the shower
I had plenty of people
yeah.
walking around in that thing.
Yeah.
It was very easy for 2 people to move around. I'd be like 20 people in there moving around just fine.
Now, you didn't have the expansive counter space in the bathroom that other teams had, but I would give up a ton of counter space. And the counters were plenty big. I mean, the sink areas, each sink area was big. You could fit what you needed on there. It wasn't tight at all. But I would give up like the really expensive counter to have a decent closet any day of the week.
Yeah. And the shower was not as big as it appeared on TV. You step in, and on the right side was a floating seat, which I thought was smart. And then it's a good-sized shower. It's not overly big, and in our niche wash, it has a decent-sized niche. It actually did.
A veteran move.
A
decent-sized niche.
Veteran move, yeah.
Yeah. So again, I think that space didn't disappoint.
Right.
I thought it was prettier in person than it was on TV.
Well, and I'm going to bring up something here that I think just highlights the fact, the difference between having somebody that understands design, because they had the scalloped wall with the tub, and then in the middle of the tub, the mechanics for it came out. Well, on the floor, they had this really nice curved wood accent piece that went along the floor up against the wall that came out of, and it was pretty. It's not something that,
not like I'm going to go to Home Depot and buy a spigot to put next to my
tub. and a very nice little piece, not highlighted on the TV show, an aspect of design that maybe you don't get any credit for. It doesn't cost a whole lot, but boy, did it look nice when you're looking back behind the tub, and here's this beautiful little wood piece back there. Yeah. So I think that, that's
A lot of attention to detail. And if you contrast this with Team Aloha's bathroom, I felt like it just lacked attention to the small details, probably because they only had a week to do it. I think they're very talented designers. But Michel and Alison's, just everything seemed to have a purpose and seemed to fit the purpose.
Yeah, I had this discussion before, and we had it last season with Keith and Evan, who never really seemed to get out of the mentality that they didn't have a lot of space and they didn't have a lot of money. And they were never able, I think, to break out of that and do something on the scale that was being asked for. And I think that was the whole problem with them. And I think here again, you look at somebody like Tristan and Kamohai, who are used to smaller houses and smaller this and smaller that, and just weren't able to adapt to something. Now houses that they make, say, they did $1.5 million houses, but they're on Hawaii.
Well,
it was
Hawaii,
probably 1,000 square foot house.
Yeah, exactly.
So especially on Oahu. So, not being able to adapt to the conditions that you're in, I think is just if you don't get the mindset right, I think it just kind of sets you up.
But I think they're super talented. I'd love to see them back in another season.
Yeah, I think they can. I think they can learn.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing, those guys are go-getters. I mean, if they came back on another team, they'd kill. Yeah. I mean, just absolutely. I really think they've got a lot of things going for them, and I think they care. And they just kind of. It's a learning process. You don't learn to design, 6,000 square foot homes in a day.
So moving back to Alison and Michel, another place that I thought was just a wow when you saw it, that didn't highlight as much on TV. When you walked into that basement kitchen, it was so pretty. The countertop that they used for the kitchen counter and then for the island kind of shimmered. It was like this white shimmery material, and then the green tile complemented it. It was the kitchen area was just like, again, take your breath away type of moment. It was so pretty. And it actually, the rest of that area in the basement, the living room, was fine, but like compared to the kitchen, it was just kind of there,
Yeah, and I think I had called it out when I saw the episode. I thought maybe they looked disjoint because one person did one and one person did another, and so I was on either side of the room taking pictures, and I went back and I was looking at those yesterday, and I don't really feel that it was disjoint. I think that you had this space that was the kitchen area, and then you had this lounge area. Again, the criticisms are justified that they didn't have enough money to move the lights away from the beams.
The canned lights.
Because they put the beams where they were, and the canned lights were pretty close to them. And they were pretty close to them. And it would have looked better if they'd been able to move them. But this team didn't have any money after the first week. So the question is that's something that you can fix? You can't put another 100 square feet into your closet in the main bedroom without doing something really significantly. But hey, we can move those canned lights.
Yeah.
I mean, so the negatives that I think the negatives, were definitely minimal when it came to some of the things that they did.
Yeah, and I would say with Alison and Michel, the things they did well looked better in person than they did on TV. The things that they didn't do well looked just as bad in person as they did on TV. And another example of something they didn't do well was that frickin' pickleball court. So that it was basically just a throwaway space. They finished it with concrete. They painted it. You could actually see the cracks in the concrete as you were walking through it.
Yeah, there were a lot of cracks in the concrete.
And then it was too small to be useful as a pickleball court. It was just a room. The sauna, I guess, was nice, but the cold plunge was inexplicably missing, just like it was everywhere. Yeah. And then they just had this wall that was where the cold plunge used to be with like this fake plants on it that looked horrible. So, I mean, that room was just, if you moved in there, you would pretty much start from scratch and do something different with that room. It was not good.
Yeah, but you're not talking about a lot of money just to start over.
And you're not talking about a space that is going to add a ton of value to the house. Probably what the Kamalas did, putting the media room in, was the one thing that was done with that space that added significant value. I think the arcade was cute and the music room was cute, but probably not something that really significantly impacted the appraisal.
No. And just to call out another thing. So in the basement, there was when they come down the stairs, there was a closet that went under the stairs, fairly long, and it was finished in all the homes. And just calling it out, Hamlet Homes finished in the style that everybody had done, which you didn't notice except in Jonathan and Jordan's house because they used this really rich brown. And so even when you're walking down the hallway in Jonathan and Jordan's house to the bedrooms that was an undesigned space, the Hamlet Homes extended the color of the wall and they extended the color of the accent color, and it just looked really pretty. Mm-hmm. So I remember seeing that and just really being remarkable that they went into that. They put that brown color all through that storage space. Mm-hmm. Crawling back in there and painting would not be my favorite thing to do, but
good for Hamlet Homes for taking it on.
Yeah. I mean, it looked good, and they could have just painted everything white and been done with it.
No, but they went ahead.
Obviously, I mean, in 3 of the houses it was white because there was a lot of white in there. But yeah, I just thought that was a real nice touch.
It was. Well, Stephen, we did it. We went to Utah. We made it back. And we have shared with our listeners all of the things we saw in Utah that you didn't see on TV.
I think we got most of the stuff we noticed anyway.
Yeah, well, what we noticed. And we may have missed a few things, but we tried to be thorough. Was there anything else that you specifically want to call out that we didn't cover in our discussion here today?
Looking back at I think we got it all. This was kind of funny because we were in Team Aloha's little desk area there in the front, and you had the extra room in that desk area, and you called out, you would need that in order to move the desk, and then you tried to pick up the desk, and you're like, wow, this is pretty heavy. So
so if you want to use the Murphy bed, good luck moving that desk.
Yeah. Oh, and from that standpoint, if you remember in that episode, the judge called them out for not putting the Murphy bed against the door when you just walk in, and if you did that, you could not get into the room.
Yeah, that's right.
You could not put the Murphy bed there and use. That was totally a wrong criticism of where the Murphy bed was.
Yeah, we didn't agree with some of that judge's feedback, if I remember.
So, I mean, but
even
just
though
being
we loved
completely
Jasmine,
wrong.
Yeah, we didn't love it.
I mean, hey, you put it there and you block the door.
Yeah,
okay.
Not good. You're trapped.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, so that just happened to see that. But I think we got it. We got it.
All right. Well, hey, this is our last podcast for the season. We have really, really enjoyed the season's Rock the Block. And I have to say, my favorite part, besides sharing it with all you guys, was going out to Utah and seeing what these houses looked like for real.
Yeah, and let me just say, as the post-production guy here, we tried to take breaks. If we didn't take enough breaks and you find some really weird ad in the middle of all this, I'm going to apologize now. We tried. We
do our best.
I didn't know we were going to be in here this long.
Yeah. Well, we're in. There's just so much to talk about.
There's so much. Yeah, and we just loved it. I mean, going out there was so much fun, and I don't want to feel like we're a shill for Hamlet Homes, but people we ran into were just so nice and so open. It was just a really good experience, and so was everybody else that was walking through the houses. I mean, you could just stop and start talking to people.
Yep, yeah, really fun. So if you ever have the chance to do it, and you're a Rock the Block fan, we definitely recommend it. And if you guys have any questions for us or comments, you want to know anything else about what we saw when we did these houses, we took hundreds of photos while we were there, and we will do our best to answer your questions. But other than that, I guess, Stephen, that's it. I guess that's Amy and Stephen signing off from season 6 of Rock the Block.